Welcome back to Cheddar's Opening Bell, everyone. The opening bell just rang moments ago. Let's see where things stand this morning in the first couple of minutes of trade. We are seeing green across the board right now. The Dow is up by 0.8% this morning. The Nasdaq also higher by 0.9%. The S&P 500 also in the green by 0.8%. And even the Russell 2000 in positive territory by more than 1% at this point. And joining us now to break down all the market action is Rebecca Walser. She's the president of Walser Wealth Management. Rebecca, great to have you with us this morning. Obviously, a lot of developments over the weekend. President Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis, information in some ways that has been conflicting from doctors and the White House itself. How are investors reacting this morning following all of the weekend's developments?
So far, we're seeing that we hope to open in the green, and we're about 190 points on the Dow. So many points. We're looking green, Nora, and I think that investors overall are getting the consensus that the president put out 2 video messages one each day, and was looking better. And obviously, he did a drive-by, wave-by to supporters yesterday at the hospital. And so the rumor is that the doctors could release him as fast as today, and the market likes that news.
Rebecca, what aspect of the president's diagnosis do you think is having the biggest impact on investor sentiment? Whether it's just the unknowns that are ahead, the notion that there's other lawmakers in D.C. who are testing positive for the virus and that could impact things like stimulus. What do you think is really the facet of this diagnosis that investors are really paying the most attention to?
I think the real big hurdle, and I don't know that we're exactly out of it, but it's the first 48 hours, so basically the weekend time period to see if his condition was going to get substantially worse. I mean, he is, 74. He keeps a very active schedule. I'm sure that he is probably physically exhausted, and then you give a 74-year-old this diagnosis, and you can just see that it's a recipe for a potential disaster. And so that's why the markets reacted so negatively on Friday, and now they're reacting positively because it's been good news. We've seen that he's not on a ventilator, and he's not got oxygen going through his nose, and investors like, as they just like stability. And so, no transfer of power discussions happening that maybe some people would want, but as the market likes certainty, the market likes steadiness and calmness. And so definitely having your president in the, in the hospital with coronavirus at 74 is not, a recipe for stability.
Yeah, no, Rebecca, to that point, as I mentioned, other lawmakers have tested positive who have been around President Trump, have tested positive for the virus. There's concern about further delays in stimulus, even though we have been getting some reports that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and Nancy Pelosi had been speaking. There's at least stimulus and aid available for airlines that is imminent. How do you think these diagnoses impact the future and the urgency around stimulus measures for the U.S. economy?
Yeah, I was really hoping against hope for, some kind of bipartisanship while the president was in the hospital. And we started to think that maybe that was the direction it was going to go with some of the comments that Speaker Pelosi mentioned. But then she really clarified and said, no, it's really time for them to step up and give us what we want. What I really do like, Nora, is the bifurcated strategy to give the airline stimulus, because we know that they're facing thousands of layoffs because the stimulus is run out, obviously, as of October 1st. So the fact that they're carving out the airlines, I think, does need special attention. They're talking about an industry that as they lose people or as they stop, you're looking at potential bankruptcies very quickly. The cash burn is very fast, as you know, Nora. So I think that them carving out the airlines is exactly important. If they're going to be political still about all of the rest of it, unfortunately, the American people are suffering, the ones that are still unemployed because we're not reopened. But at the same time, we do need to get, besides just the airlines, we need to get back on a track of getting some kind of stimulus. We know, Nora, that the country is still shut down. And without further government stimulus, we're really going to start to feel the pains that we should be feeling in the absence of having it. So it is a concern. And all I can say that to people that are worried about people that are, getting this mass spread of the virus is there's been a lot of work done remotely in Congress this year. A lot of people are Skyping it in or whatever their system is. And so at least we can still get some productive talks out, even if people have to work remote.
Rebecca, if there is, just aid for airlines to start in these larger stimulus conversations, what does that do to stave off market volatility, to stave off negative sentiment? Is it going to be very short-lived? Are investors going to be looking for the next phase of stimulus? What do you think things will kind of look like if aid for airlines gets passed?
You're hitting the nail on the head, Nora. That's exactly what investors are going to say. They're going to say, okay, good, we're relieved about our Delta, United, American stocks, but now we need to worry about, all of the other things that are being and going to be impacted. So I think at this point, the election is so close. I don't know if we should just call it a day and say it's not going to happen until after November 3rd, or it is going to happen, and just, really put the pressure on. We need Congress to come to a deal. There's a lot of things still in this HEROES Act that we didn't have in the CARES Act that Pelosi is really championing. And a lot of it is related to foreign workers, Wall Street wanting a lot of ability to get foreign workers and cheaper labor. And Americans are out of jobs right now. So I don't think Americans really understand what the HEROES Act is all incorporating, and it's still too big of a price tag for Republicans. So investors are going to be happy about the airlines, yes, and that's going to help us with a really important segment. But yeah, they're still going to be looking for more, and we need to get more, Nora. There's no doubt.
Right. And Rebecca, on Friday, we saw a relatively disappointing jobs report for the month of September. Fewer jobs had been added than expected as well. Do you think the shape of recovery is in line with your expectations? What does economic recovery at this point look like, given the new metrics that we've gotten in just the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, and we've had some conflicting numbers, right, Nora? Because we've had great, economic indicators. We'll get the final PMI today, the final ISM this morning. But we've had some really good. The housing numbers have been unbelievable, as you know. So we've had some good positive numbers in there. But they are mixed, and we do see a slowdown of the recovery because of the fact that we're not fully open. We have such a hodgepodge policy throughout the country in different states, and it's no way to really build a recovery of an economy that was voluntarily shut down. So unfortunately, as much as I don't want to say this, I don't think we're going to get massive clarity until the election is over. I think this has been so politicized. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit in a presidential election year. And it's a balance of power. And it's a huge ideological shift, whereas a lot of the country's just very divided economically even. And so unfortunately, I'd love to say we're going to get it. And we do need it so bad, Nora, but I just don't know if we're going to get it this close to an election. It's so politicized.
All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for your time this morning and for your insight. That's Rebecca Walser, president of Walser Wealth Management. Thanks again.